The purpose of today's video is to show you a couple of my BB replicas that are made to come apart and function very like the real thing. The reason why I have these is I like the history of firearms, and not wanting real handguns in the house, I can still get the feel of. You can read about these designs and whatnot, but until you have it in your hand, you understand what John Browning was thinking. The Colt 1911, John Browning started to design it before that, earlier prototypes. So this is a design that now is about 120 years old. I will also be showing you this KWC replica of a Beretta 92, the rare model that had full auto capability. It breaks down as you would expect it to. The slide locks back, also as you would expect it to, and it stays back after the last shot. The CO2 goes in the magazine and the BBs. Model 1911 with Springfield Armory on it. This is my second model 1911. I have another one. It operates just exactly like the real 911. John Browning put the grip safety, so even if it's cocked and ready and this safety is off, it will not fire until you actually grip that piece there. Of course, it holds back like a real 1911, but look at that chrome barrel. I really like that. It has the floating barrel. It's got the ribs inside, so that, you know, like the real firearm, when the shot first happened, the slide started back before the barrel, and then unlocked the barrel and moved the barrel back. By then, the bullet's already left the barrel. And the reason for that is if it didn't lock at the moment the bullet was leaving the barrel, it'd blow the gun apart. So it's got a locking barrel. This one does too. It has a floating locking barrel. These are details they do not need to put in a BB gun, but of course it makes it extremely realistic. Now, I've handled a real 1911, and this is exactly the same. And of course this one breaks down the same as the real 1911. And of course the CO2 and the BBs go in the magazine. Instead of a real cartridge being loaded in, when the slide comes back and forth, it loads in a BB. Instead of the hammer striking the primer in the cartridge, it strikes the valve that lets out some CO2. The 1911 had a narrow pistol grip, so, you know, it only took 7 rounds, and because the cartridges are stacked on top of each other, so ergo they've had to widen this hole a little bit unrealistically just so that the CO2 would fit in there. We don't have that problem with this one because, like modern handguns, cartridges stack zigzag, so you can get more in. So the real firearm would have taken 17. As replicas, they actually are made to weigh the same. This is really heavy. This one's really heavy. And the 1911 weighs the same as the real 1911. The only thing is, you know, with the single stack magazine, I find the 1911 easy to point. It's nice. It feels nice in the hand. This kind of feels fat in the hand, like modern, you know, like modern guns. Here's a magazine loaded up. I'm a bit of a purist. The real firearm took 17 cartridges. This magazine takes 18 BBs, but I only put 17. So without further ado, of course, always make sure you're wearing proper eye safety. I'm going to switch it to burst, or full auto anyway. The 1911 magazine will take 18 BBs, but I'm a bit of a geeky purist, as I said, and so I only put 7. Obviously, you can't do a proper historical comparison without Georg Luger's 1908 pistol. It is an extremely realistic model. This functions exactly like the real thing. In the 1911, John Browning had a sort of a square device that went around the magazine, so that when you pulled the trigger, that square device moved back and forth, and that's what, you know, released the sear, released the hammer. Georg Luger's way of getting from the trigger to the sear around the magazine was this cantilevered action. And this pistol actually has it exactly like the real thing. This even has the extractor, separate piece, even though it's not actually extracting a shell from a real cartridge. Instead of having lugs on the barrel like John Browning did on his 1911, this cocking piece is up against this sort of very slanted part. The primer is struck, the bullet travels down the barrel. Pressure comes back from that and opens this. By now the bullet has left the barrel, but the barrel is still locked in, see? Once it gets to this point, it unlocks the barrel and the slide, and the whole thing moves back and picks up the next round. Like the 1911, the Luger stacked the cartridges, so they had to make the unrealistic roundness here so that the CO2 would fit. It breaks down like the real thing. Go that far, pull that down. It's hard to do with the camera. That comes out, and simple enough, slides right off. Not quite as handy as the Colt 1911, and a lot more parts to machine and manufacture. This was the first truly successful semi-automatic, or what you would call automatic, pistol. John Browning's came a little later. He was experimenting. He had a model before called the 1905 he experimented with. But his model was simpler with less parts, easier to manufacture, easier to take care of. So at the end of the day, Luger's design did not win out, and ergo, the 1911 went on to be the grandfather of all modern automatic pistols. One thing Luger incorporated into the design, which is absolutely fantastic, is the angle here and the shape of the pistol grip means when you grab it, it automatically points properly. Instead of like this, because my arm, my arm isn't in front of my eyes. But when you grab it, it naturally seats like that. It is, it points extremely well. And again, this is one of the benefits of having the BB replicas. I don't have to have a real firearm to understand when I read in the history books that I have on the history of the development of these arms and stuff, why certain ones were successful, certain ones weren't, why they were chosen, what was good about them or not. I can actually get a feel for that. Now, I'm not shooting live rounds, of course, but, it still piques my historical interest.